Guess I'll go ahead and get started then. I didn't really get to say hi to everybody because I was playing with these microphones. But my name is Lyall. I'm an executive vice president of this company called Five Rings Financial, also a founding partner. And Five Rings Financial is a company that's a lot like a Merrill Lynch or a Schwab, except where those companies pretty much work with millionaire type folks. Five Rings Financial pretty much works with middle Americans. Now, I always ask people when I'm in person, I hope I haven't offended anyone. Are there any millionaires in the audience? And sometimes I get one or two people, especially if I'm in Southern California. You know, people's houses are worth $1 million. So we know middle Americans will make intelligent decisions about their money if they've got good information. But the problem for most of us is we never get any information at all. As a matter of fact, if you think about where we learn our lessons and our habits and everything we know about money, where do you think that is? If you said your parents, you're right. Most of us learn everything we know about money from our parents. So if our parents did well, chances are we'll do well. But if they didn't, we're kind of out of luck. So we know most of us people go to school for 12 to 16 years to learn how to read, write, and do arithmetic. And I'm sure you agree with me. Those are all really important things to know and learn. But when you go to school, become adults, some of the other things we find out we should have been learning was maybe how to stay married, how to raise kids, and of course, how to handle money. I've got 5 kids. I've lots of kids, been married a long, long time, but I still feel like I'm an expert in either one of those subjects. But money is something I'm pretty much an expert in. So I'm just going to stick to that subject tonight. So before I get started, I always like to kind of lay out some ground rules. Number one, there's nothing for sale tonight. If you're sitting here in person with me, I tell you that if you hid your wallet or your purse in your car, you didn't need to do that because there's nothing for sale, number one. Number two, didn't put a name tag on you, didn't take you down your email address. Actually, I guess we do have your email address maybe, but email address, phone number, didn't take a DNA sample from you so it can bother you for the rest of your life. We know that the information that we're going to give you is very, very powerful. And we know that if you actually want to know more, you'll contact us. And of course, the third one is talking about money can sometimes be a little bit boring, a little bit dry. So tonight I'm going to try to be funny. I'm going to try to weave a little bit of humor through the talk. And even though, you might not think I'm funny, just go ahead and smile anyway, because it just kind of encouraged me a little bit. It'll make me feel much better. So I'm going to kick my shoes off here real quick. This is really awesome. Take my shoes off, and you don't know if I did or not. So just know that I did, actually. So anyway, I like to take a little poll of people that are in the audience. I can see most of you on the screen. And so I always like to ask a few questions before I get started. So how many of you came tonight to learn more about how to put together that big old pile of money for retirement? By a show of hands, right? That's pretty important. And then how many of you came tonight to learn a little bit more about how to actually protect that big old pile of money once you got it put together? Yep, I see. How many of you came tonight to learn more concepts and ideas on how to pay less in taxes? I usually almost get 100% on that one. That's a big one. So I'm going to kind of go through several of those questions tonight. Before I do that, I want to tell you that normally when we open the doors or we open the computer to a bunch of folks like you, we know that there's basically 2 types of people in the audience. There's the folks that have been saving money their whole life. They got 401ks, they got IRAs, they got money in real estate, maybe the bank. They got all that stuff going all over the place as far as their finances goes. Worried about what's happening in our economy. When we were kids, we all loved roller coasters, but today the financial roller coaster, the curves get a little bit too tight. Hills are getting a little bit too steep. People are actually looking for ways to get off that roller coaster. So I'll speak to that group. And then the other group are the ones that haven't really started saving for retirement at all yet. And most people think I'm talking about the 20 and 30-year-olds in the audience. But I will tell you the average person in America doesn't start saving for retirement until they're 53. I know that's probably surprising to most of you, but if you think about our culture and kind of the way we do things, we get out of school, get married, start having kids. Those are both kind of expensive propositions. And then as the kids get older, they get even more expensive. And we want to make sure we get them through college. We want to launch them properly. Every once in a while, we have a boomerang. And all that stuff is really, really expensive. And that's why most people don't really start saving really in their 40s, early 50s. So 53 really is the number. So I'm going to speak to that first group, the ones that have been saving money their whole life. And I like to talk about a financial pyramid when I do that. And on one end of the pyramid, we have risk. And when I talk about risk, I'm talking about things like stocks and mutual funds. Sometimes even talk about commodities. People they're always wondering about commodities because gold and silver are commodities, and there's several other things out there, but they're still kind of risky. And even believe it or not, is still kind of a risky proposition. So on the risky side of things, there's great opportunity for gain, but the thing that scares people the most today is there's that same opportunity for loss. On the other end of the teeter-totter, we've got safety. And when I'm talking about safety, I'm talking about things like CDs, money markets, the mattress. And of course, I say the mattress to get a laugh. I've been saying the mattress to get a laugh for years. About a year and a half ago, I was in Torrance, California. I said the mattress, and at the end of the presentation, a guy walks up to me from the side of the room, says, Lyall, you said mattress tonight. He says, I have to tell you, I have over 10 right now. I thought to myself, you know, if that guy lived in Colorado, I could understand that. We got this new crop here in Colorado. People are stashing money everywhere, right? But he was in California. They didn't have the crop there yet. I guess they just passed a law that they're gonna. But he's in California. I said, so what do you do for a living? He says, well, I'm a plumber, and I have 15 employees. I said, are you successful? He said, yes, I am. I said, why do you have $10,000 underneath your mattress? He says, because I'm a little bit worried about what's going on. I want to be able to make sure that I can reach out and actually grab some of my money if I need it. So since that time, I've been telling that story, of course, for a long, long time. But since I told the story about the guy walking up to me at the end of the presentation, I normally do this presentation probably 5 or 6 times a month in restaurants. And since that time, about once a month, somebody's always walked up to me and said, Lyall, I got money underneath the mattress. I've got money in the backyard buried. I got money in the freezer. But a year ago, I was in Keensburg, Colorado, which is about 50 miles east of Denver. I did not wear a tie. I actually wore some overalls and put a little grass hanging out my mouth. And there's an old farmer walks up to me at the end of the presentation and says, Lyall, I got $300,000 in my attic. I was absolutely blown away. And I've been trying to get his address for the last year. I just can't figure it out yet. So anyway, that was the safety side of things. There's not very much opportunity for gain, but there's no opportunity for loss. And if we look at a timeline from 2000 to 2016, I have not upgraded to 2017 yet. But we look at that timeline, remember back in the 80s and 90s, the market was going up 15 or 20 or 30% per year. And by 2000, we hit the highest point ever in the history of the market. It was absolutely amazing. But then if you remember what happened in 01, 02, that was kind of not amazing. 01, 02, we had our first opportunity to lose about half of our retirement savings in 1 year. We had a 45% adjustment. We all thought we went off the cliff, but the media called it an adjustment in the market. And back then we went and talked to our clients and said, hey, you just lost half of your retirement savings. Have you ever thought about taking at least some of your money and putting it in a place that you know for sure it'll be there when you need it? And back then, everyone said that we remember the 80s and the 90s. We know that this is just a fluke. This is never going to happen again. And sure enough, it didn't seem like it was going to happen again, because by 2007, we were actually 4% above where we were in 2000. People were dancing in the streets. I don't know if y'all remember that, but people were so excited to get back to where they started. Seems kind of strange to me. You know, if I was there with you in person and tomorrow morning you invited me over to your house to have a cup of coffee and talk about your retirement savings, all your retirement savings tomorrow, I would guarantee you that in 2024, you'll have exactly the same amount of money that you have today. How many would you want to do business with me? Hopefully 0, right? So I'm just always baffled by the thought that people got so excited about it getting back to 0. Anyway, 08 happened. This time it was a 54% adjustment in the market. And this year right here totally changed the entire financial landscape of our country. People stopped saying never and people started saying when. Crazy. 70% of us moved all or part of our money from risk to safety. And since that time, we've been living with pretty much a 1% or less interest environment for the last 7 or 8 years. And the demographic I'm talking about is you and me, middle Americans. Because today people are more concerned with the return of than the return on their money. They want to make sure. So when I sit down with clients and say, hey, if I could create the perfect retirement savings vehicle for you, what would it look like? Pretty much everyone says, well, remember the 80s and 90s, so we want to get the upside potential of the market. But we remember 01 and 08, so we never want to lose another dime. So let's move on and talk to the folks that have been saving money their whole life, or haven't been saving their whole money, haven't even really started saving money yet at all. And when I speak to that group of people, I like to talk about financial principles. And the reason I talk about principles is because principles are timeless. The ones I'm going to talk about tonight were the same 2,000 years ago as they are today, and they'll be the same 2,000 years from today as they are today. And I also believe that if we all would have been younger, maybe in high school, 2 or 3 times in high school, and 3 or 4 times in college, every one of us would have a completely different financial picture. Very, very simple principles, but I know that if we all lived by them, we'd all have a, like I said, completely different financial picture. So I'm going to talk about tonight time value of money, compound interest, and tax deferral. Now I know every one of you has heard of those, but if I asked you to explain to me exactly how they work, you'd probably say, I've heard of them, but that's as far as it goes. So I'm going to talk about the time value of money first. In order to do that, I'm going to tell you a little story about how Five Rings Financial got started. So let's go way back to 1982. It's in Kansas. There's a young man named Mike. And Mike had been out of college for about 5 years, graduated from KU. Basically living in that small town for 5 years, had at least 5 jobs, maybe 6 or 7 jobs, had a wife, had 2 kids, and he was living totally paycheck to paycheck. And this is the kicker, he had already accumulated $30,000 of credit card debt. Holy smokes, that's crazy. If you think about that in today's dollars, $30,000 of credit card debt back in 1982 would probably be somewhere close to $100,000 of credit card debt. Can you imagine having that much debt? So one day Mike got a card in the mail saying, Mike, we'd like to invite you to a class, and we're going to teach you how money works. And Mike looked at that card and he says, I think they must have screwed up in the mailroom. They got the wrong Mike. That says Mike Wilk. Got the wrong Mike Wilk. But I'm going to go to that class anyway. I know I don't qualify, but I want to find out what the wealthy people are talking about behind our backs. So Mike actually went to a live class. Of course, back then we didn't have computers like this. We had computers, but they filled up an entire house just for one. And Mike sat way in the back of the room, way in the back of the restaurant, actually right next to the back door. Because he knew when the guy got done talking, the guy was going to ask him for an appointment. So Mike sat way back there, and the guy went through the presentation, and Mike actually really got a lot from the presentation, really liked it. But as soon as the guy got done talking, Mike went for the door. Now, that speaker must have been wearing track shoes that night because he actually caught Mike before he got out the door and said, hey, what's your rush? Mike says, well, I really enjoyed your presentation, but I really feel like I don't qualify for anything you talked about. The guy's name is Jim, and Jim said, why do you say that? And Mike told him his story, and then he said, and furthermore, I've got $30,000 of credit card debt. And Jim said, wow, that's pretty bad. I'm not sure if I've heard anything worse from anyone before. But he said, I'd still be willing to give you an hour of my time if you give me an hour of your time. So Mike said, well, suit yourself. Come on over. So the next week, Jim came over. They sat down at the kitchen table, and they started talking. Actually, before they started talking, Jim, I got to tell you, nothing has changed since last week. He said, I'm still broke. And Jim said, that's okay. He said, I feel like I'm the luckiest guy in the whole wide world because I actually get to create what people want. And that's a big old pile of money for retirement. So he said, Mike, could you save $5 a day? And Mike had a knee-jerk reaction. He said, yeah, I could do $5 a day. That's no big deal. I could do that. Jim said, if you could do $5 a day and I got you a decent interest rate for about 40 years, that $5 a day would turn into $1 million. But the very first time I saw that, I was absolutely flabbergasted, and I got very, very excited. Well, Mike got very, very excited too. I couldn't believe that $5 a day would become $1 million in that period of time. So anyway, Mike, like I said, got excited, but then he looked back at Jim with kind of a deer in the headlights look, and Jim said, what's wrong? Mike said, well, I just did the math. What math do you think Mike did? Yep, you're right. He multiplied $5 a day times 30, because that's how we think about our money. 30 times $5 a day is $150 per month. So Mike made a very profound statement. This is the next statement he made, and you tell me if you don't think this is profound. He says, Jim, $5 a day, but I don't think I can handle $150 a month, right? Of course, I said that'd be funny, but Mike actually said that. And I got to ask you, is that emotion or is that logic? You're right. It's total emotion. So Mike got into this business way back in 1982 after meeting with Jim and this and that and this and that. One thing led to another. And so the thing that Mike's been most trying to impart to his clients since 1982 is this. If you can take the emotion out of your financial decisions, you'll always win the money game. We've all heard about 8 years ago, Forbes magazine did an interview with him, put him in the magazine. And one of the questions they asked Warren Buffett way back in 8 years ago was this. They said, "Mr. Buffett, to what do you owe your great success concerning your finances?" And Warren Buffett said, "That's the easiest question anyone's ever asked me." He said, "Ever since I was a little wee guy, I've never been emotional about any financial decision I've ever made. It's always been math and logic." Now, I'll tell you, if you got to know Mike a little bit, you'd know he's still kind of an emotional guy. So Jim knew he had him. And a lot of times when we sit down with our clients, people always ask me, "Lyall, why do you spend so much time talking about this?" This is the reason. When we sit down with our clients say, "Man, we love what you taught us. This is absolutely amazing." But 80% of the time, most of our clients say, "I'd love to do something with you, but I just don't feel like I have any extra money to save or to put away for retirement savings," right? They always tell us, "We got money for our house payment, our car payment, got money for the electric bill and the gas bill and a little bit of food, a little bit of entertainment, a little bit of clothing, bucks, but I just don't feel like I have anything for retirement." So we run into that all the time. So what we've done is we've actually figured out a way to help people refinance their finances. Now, people always look at me kind of weird. What's that mean? Well, have you all ever heard of refinancing a mortgage? Yep, we all know about that. The reason we do that, of course, is to lower the interest rate, which lowers the payment, which puts more money in our pocket. So when we refinance a person's finances, what we do is we look at everything that has anything to do with a person's financial picture. We help them to save money in all areas of their finances. We look at their homeowners and their auto and their umbrella policies, too much there. We look at their life insurance and their health insurance, make sure got it all straightened out there. And then sometimes we look at their taxes, and we look at their mortgage, and we look at their 401ks, we look at their IRAs, look at all these different aspects of their financial picture, run it through this funnel, make sure that they're not paying too much for any of those services or their products. And what we normally find is somewhere between $200 to $300 per month that they didn't know they had. And if you just do that same equation, $200 in the same equation would actually come out to be $1.5 million. So how many of you wish you would have learned about the time value of money when you're in high school or college? Right? Show of hands, a whole bunch of you. Here's a better question, though, for you. How many of you wish you would have had the discipline to actually do something about it? That's the key, isn't it? So that's the time value of money. The next one is probably the most popular one I do. Compound interest. There's a guy, of course, he died many years ago. His name was Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said that compound interest was the eighth one. He also said it was the most important discovery of his life concerning his finances. And probably the most powerful thing that he said was this. He said, compound interest, those that understand it, earn it. Those that don't, pay it. Now, he died way back in 1955. And last year, his estate earned a little bit over $10 million because he put the wheels of compound interest in motion way back in 1955 before he passed away. It's absolutely amazing. So the way compound interest works is this. You make a deposit. Your deposit earns interest, and then your interest earns interest on top of that. Very, very simple. There's a mathematical equation called the rule of 72 that tells us exactly how it works. So the rule of 72 says if you take the interest rate that you're earning, divide it into the number 72, that tells you how many years it's going to take for your money to double. So here's the first quiz of the night. If you gave me $1 tonight and offered you 1% interest, how many years would it take that dollar to double? If you said 72, you're right. 72 years. So how many 72-year periods do we have in our life? We're hoping for one. So here's some sage advice from a company that's been in business for almost 35 years. Stay away from 1% interest rates. I'll tell you, today in the United States, there's over 10 trillion. That's trillion with a T. 1% and less. And of course, that demographic is us, right? We're, like I said earlier, we're more concerned with the return of than the return on our money. We want to make sure our money is there. So remember earlier, I was talking about moving your money from risk to safety. If you're going to take your money, put it in a safe place, besides the backyard, the freezer, or the mattress, of course, the next place you might think of might be the bank. Do you know what the going rate on a CD nationwide average in the United States is today? 1 year CD is 0.38. 5-year CD has 1.1%. So let's kind of meet somewhere in the middle. Let's say it's 0.5. If you gave me $1 tonight, I'd offer you 0.5% interest on that dollar. How many years would it take your dollar to double? If you're right, okay? I'm telling you, this is crazy. There's over $5 trillion sitting in CDs in this country right now, $5 trillion. Let's just take it one step further. A lot of us have 401ks. 401ks are neat because they give you all kinds of different opportunities to put money in different mutual funds, but there's also a safe place in a 401k to put your money. It's called the money market. And you all know what the going rate on the money market is today in the United States? You're all thinking I'm going to say 1%. It's actually 0.1%. But let's just say it's 0.25. You give me $1 tonight off your 0.25, that's 288 years for your money to double. If it'd be 720 years for your money to double. So people always ask me, Lyall, why do you spend so dang much time on compound interest? Well, number one, I think it's very, very important. But number two, a lot of times I have clients ask me, Lyall, you're talking about compound interest. What's the big deal? If you can get me an extra 2 or 3% per year on my money, 2 or 3 or 4%, what's the big deal? Well, I'm going to show you what the big deal is right here, okay? So let's say we have 3 sisters. They're triplets. They're 29 years old. Grandma dies, leaves each of the ladies $5,000. In her will, she says, ladies, what I'd like you to do is I want you to take your $5,000 and I want you to put it one place. Of course, invest it someplace. I want you to put it one place. I want you to leave it there till you're 65. You can't add to it. You can't take anything away. You just got to leave it sit. Now, sister number 1, she's a middle American, so where's she going to go? If you said the bank, you're probably right. Because, of course, that's where grandma and grandpa went. That's where mom and dad went. So where else would she go? Right to the bank. And she probably doesn't have a broker. Matter of fact, middle Americans and wealthy people have a completely different definition of broker. To a wealthy person, a broker is someone that counsels them, teaches them, shows them how to invest their money. Broker is what's going to be next month if something doesn't change. No one laughed. I didn't get one smile out of that. That's my best joke. So anyway, sister number 1, she is a middle American. She's going to take her money to the bank. Let's say the banker is feeling very generous tonight. Rather than offering 0.5%, he's going to offer her 4% on her CD. And 4 divides into 72 18 times. So in 18 years, that $5,000 at age 47 will become $10,000. And in 18 more years at age 65, that $10,000 would become $20,000. And when I talk about 4%, most people don't get very excited about 4% until I show them that. And they say, wait a second, that's actually pretty strong. It doubled twice in that period of time. Sister number 2, let's say she goes out and finds a place where she can get 8%. A lot of times people say, Lyall, where in the heck can you find 8% year in and year out return? Well, one of the reasons you may have been invited here tonight is the accounts out there that perform that way, year in and year out. But the guy that showed me this thing years and years and years ago said, Lyall, this sister gets 4, this sister gets 8. What's this number down here going to be? I told him, I said, I took a lot of math, a lot of science in college, and I finally got my degree after 7 years. I flunked a few classes. But anyway, I said, if we're going to go from 4 to 8, we're going to double the interest rate. That means this 20,000 is going to be 40,000. That was my answer, right? But 8 goes in to set every 9 years the money is going to double. So at age 38, it's going to be 10,000. And at age 47, it's going to be 20,000. Look at that. She matched her sister at 65 already. At age 56, it'll be 40,000. And at age 65, it turns out it's going to be $80,000. Now, is that a big difference or a little difference? That's kind of a huge difference, isn't it? It's 4 times as much money. So 4 times percent, wouldn't it? Or maybe even 20%. So we didn't go from 4 to 15 or from 4 to 20. We just went from 4 to 8 to create this gigantic difference. 4 times as much money with just changing the interest rate just a teensy-weensy little bit. So sister number 3, let's say she goes out and finds a place where she can get 12. Now, we've seen 12 in the past. We'll probably see it again in the future. Maybe not year to year, but for the sake of this example, let's talk about 12 year to year. 12 goes into 72 6 times. Every 6 years, the money is going to double. I'm not going to go through all the numbers with you. I'm just going to tell you that $5,000 would become $320,000. Now that is huge. That quadruples the 80,000 again. But we didn't go from 4 to 20 or from 4 to 40 to create that. We just went from 4 to 8 to 12. So it really does make a significant difference, even if we change the interest rate by just a little wee bit. And so if I could promise everyone in the crowd on the computer, I could promise every one of you, guaranteed contractually, would have any takers? I would, right? 18% sounds amazing. If 12% creates 320, start 29, $5,000, 18%. 18 goes into 72 4 times. Every 4 years, the money is going to double. So at age 65, the $5,000 will become $2.4 million. Your part. So this is contractually guaranteed. Where in the heck can you find 18% today guaranteed? Well, let me see here. If you're a woman, it might be in your purse. If you're a man, it might be in your wallet. One of these things, right? Credit card. People say, wait a second, you mean compound interest works against me as well as it works for me? Remember what Albert Einstein said? Those that understand it earn it. Those that don't pay it. These guys, I decided to get an airline card because I kind of fly a lot. So last year I went ahead and picked this card up. These guys are so generous. They're offering me 24% per year. Isn't that amazing? 24%. So anyway, a lot of times when we sit down with a client and we find out that they got some credit card debt, what we'll do is we'll actually figure out ways for them to pay their credit card debt off as they're growing their money. As a matter of fact, that's kind of how Five Rings Financer got started. Mike sat down with Jim. Jim showed him how to make $1 million or $1.5 million by the time he was 66. He said, Jim, you showed me how to do that, but what about this $30,000 in debt that I have? Jim says, well, there's 2 ways to get out of debt, Mike. You can either cut back, go on a financial diet. Going on a financial diet is a little bit like going on a regular diet. How many of you started a diet the first of the year and you kind of gave it up already? Me, okay? It usually lasts about 2 weeks, right? So financial diets doesn't work so good. So the other way to get out of debt is to make more money. So what Jim said to Mike was this. He said, Mike, I can tell that you kind of really have taken a liking to what I do. He said, you want to get out of debt? He said, I'd be willing to bring you on as an apprentice and teach you how to do what I do. And Mike says, well, no, Jim, I really appreciate it, but I'm not really sure I could do that. And Jim said, well, I'm not really sure you could do it either, but I'm willing to take a chance. So Mike thought to himself, I'm going to go ahead and give it a try. I make a few $100 extra over and above my job. Months, if something else comes up better, I'll go ahead and start something else. So that's how Five Rings Financer got started way back in 1982. So that is compound interest. Oh, by the way, this is the story. I was in San Marcos, California a couple of years ago. Did a presentation with a large group of people. At the end of the presentation, a young lady walks up to me. She's probably early 30s. She says, Lyall, you completely changed the way I think tonight. I said, what's going on? She says, well, that compound interest thing. She said, I have a credit card 3 years ago, had $2,000 charged on it. I promised myself that's the only credit card I have. I'm going to pay this thing off. One thing on it in 3 years. The thing that really is bumming me out, though, is the balance on that card is the same today as it was when I started. I didn't understand why until tonight when you showed me that 18% thing. So that's compound interest. The last one is probably the most impactful one I'm going to show you. It's called tax deferral or non-taxable accounts. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to, one of the reasons that wealthy people keep getting wealthier is because they grow as much of their money in non-taxable accounts. So I'll give you a quick example of one of my wealthy clients. I'm going to make him an offer that if he gives me $1 tonight, I'll double the dollar for him every year for the next 20 years. So next year, the dollar is going to become 2. The year after that, it's going to be 4. Next year, it'll be 8. And in 20 years, believe it or not, that dollar would become $1,048,000. Holy smokes. And there's two or three things wrong with this example. Number one, of course, I can't offer you 100% return. If I could, you'd have more than $1 to give me tonight, wouldn't you? Maybe 5 or 10 or 50 or 100, right? If I could multiply it like that. So it can't offer you 100% return. Number two, I didn't take out any fees. Firebrings Financial has been in business for over 30, almost 35 years. We've been a 100% non-fee based company for all those years. We have not charged one fee to one client in all those years. We actually get compensated by the companies that we represent. And of course, the third part that's not right, of course, I didn't take out any taxes. So to one of my middle American clients, they give me $1 tonight, I'll double the dollar for them every year for the next 20 years. But let's say they forgot everything that I taught them about non-taxable accounts. So they're going to grow their money in a taxable account. And let's say they're in the 28% tax bracket. So the very first year, the dollar becomes $2. But this time, Uncle Sam says, wait a second, that is a $1 gain. I want my 28 cents. So your $2 isn't $2, it's $1.72. Or, which of course then taxes down to $2.96 and doubles up again to $5.92 and taxes down again to $5.09. Now that's as far as I have memorized it so far. But if this one over here is $1,048,000 after 20 years, what do y'all think this one's going to be? Of course, you can't answer me, so I'll just give you what the usual answers are. When I looked at this thing, the very first time I looked at it, I thought I was really smart. What I did was I just took 28%, which is close to 30. I just subtracted 30% from $1 million. I came up with $700,000. That was my wrong. Most of my clients know it's got to be much worse than that. They know that I wouldn't be talking about it unless it was really, really drastic. So most people guess somewhere between 250 and 500,000. If you guess 500,000, you're pretty close because it does start with a 5, but it's really not that close. It's 51,353. Now, normally, if I'm in a public place, someone falls off their chair almost every time that I say that. That's kind of a gigantic difference. That's a million by growing your money in a non-taxed account versus a taxed account. So people always say, they say, wait a second, you're going to grow money in a non-taxed account. That means something like a 401k or an IRA. Yeah, that's right. Most people say, well, don't I have to pay taxes if I grow money that way? Normally in a 401k or an IRA, you do. Is that money taxed as long-term capital gains or is it taxed some other way? If you said it's taxed as income, you're right. So do y'all think taxes will be higher or lower when you're if you said higher, you're probably right. If we do a quick history lesson, we'll go back to 1952. I asked you what do you think the top rate tax rate in 1952 was? Most people guess somewhere between 15 and 20%, but I'll tell you, top tax rate in 1952 was 92%. It's kind of hard to believe, isn't it? It's like, holy smokes, that's like the dark ages. I can't believe it was 92%. And it was actually a graduated tax code. And if you made anything over $200,000 in 1952, 92%. So if you made 300,000 that year, the last 100,000 would have only netted $8,000. Let's fast forward to 1980. Ronald Reagan, Jimmy Carter running for the White House. Top tax rate back then was 70%. Ronald Reagan dropped the tax rate a couple years later, had one of the biggest financial booms we've ever had in this country. It's slowly but surely the tax rate has creeped back up, and now it's up around 40. So the reason I'm bringing that up is this. We've been living in one of the lowest tax environments in the history of our country for the last 35 years. So chances of taxes going up is very great. We turn retirement age, tax rates at 50%. 50% of $1 million is still right around 500,000, isn't it? Is that better than 51,353? Absolutely. Now, here's something really, really, really cool about what I just showed you. Not only can we show you how to grow your money in a taxed or a non-taxed environment, this may be why you came tonight. We can actually show you how to after you've grown the money in a non-taxed environment, we can actually show you how to access the money 100%. Okay, that's pretty cool. So there's 3 things that I've taught you tonight. First one is time value of money. What that says is if you take small amounts of money and put them over a long period of time at a decent interest rate, it creates amazing results. Then the next one is compound interest. You'll have to remember one number for compound interest. What number is that? You're right, 72. And then, of course, the last one is grow as much of your money in non-tax environments as you can. And if you can figure out a way to access the money completely tax-free, do that too. Doesn't do it. We show our clients how to access the money tax-free. So remember earlier, I said, what I do sometimes when I sit down with a client is I wave my magic wand and I ask them if I could create the perfect retirement savings vehicle for you, what would it look like? And they say, we remember the 80s and 90s, so we want the upside potential of the market. We remember 01 and 08, so we never want to lose another penny, but we know that doesn't exist. And I'll tell you, actually, it's existed since 1995. There's a thing out there called an indexed account. And index accounts are really cool. Put your money into an account, and we credit interest to this account based on what an index does. Indexes do this. They go up and down, don't they? The index we work with most of the time is the S&P 500. A couple reasons why we use the S&P 500. Number one, it's the best barometer of what's going on in the United States economy at any given time. And number two, it's actually outperformed the NASDAQ and the Dow Jones for the last 20 years. So we look to the index to credit interest to the account, but your money's never in the index, so you can never lose a penny. So the very first year, let's say the index, that year we credit your account 10%. So far, so good. Next year, let's say the index goes down 10%. If the index went down 10% in your traditional type account, what would you expect to happen? You're right, you expect to lose 10%. But one of the reasons this has become such a huge success in retirement savings is anytime the index goes down, whether it's 0.5% or 100%, you get to sit back and relax in that year. You sit back and relax. We give you zero. People ask me, Lyall, how can you get so excited about zero? Well, in 2008, when we had that little 54% adjustment, could I have interest in any of you in zero? Absolutely, I could have, right? Every one of them said, yes, zero is my hero. So the next year, let's say the index goes up 15%. Normally if there's a floor in something, there's usually always a ceiling. In this case, let's say that the ceiling is 12%. Index goes up 15, we only give you 12. Not too good to be true. And I will tell you, most of my clients tell me that they gladly give up some of this upside potential of the market if they knew they'd never lose another penny. Totally makes sense. It's absolutely amazing. Now, the cool thing about this index account is you can access it in many different ways. If you want to do a 401k or an IRA, if you're a little bit afraid of what's going on in the market and you want to guarantee your returns a little bit better, you can roll a 401k or an IRA, in other words, a lump sum. But if you only got an extra 100 or 150 to put towards an index account, we can actually do it that way too. So there's several different ways to create an index account. So anyway, I did this presentation, of course, many times over the years. And several years ago, a young man showed up at my presentation in Denver, and he saw this, and then the very next morning he showed up at our office. We got a big old office. We occupy the top floor of an office building over in Littleton. He shows up at our office the very next morning at 8 o'clock. He's so excited. And I didn't, the problem for him is we didn't open until 9. So we actually sat in our elevator lobby for an hour waiting. I walked in, I said, I think I know you from somewhere. He says, yes, you do. He said, I was in your class last night. What are you doing here so early? He said, well, I think I finally found a way to stop the bleeding. I looked at him, I said, well, you don't look like you're bleeding. He says, no, not me, my 401k. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, last year my 401k was 140. Today it's 100. I said, yes, you're bleeding. Did anybody in the audience know someone that happened to? Absolutely. A lot of people say, yes, it happened to me. So he said, let's go in the boardroom and talk for a little bit. So we go in the boardroom, and I got to thinking about what he said to me. He said a 401k. So I don't know why, but I asked him, I said, so do you still work at that company that you have the 401k at? He says, as a matter of fact, no, I don't. He said, I quit working there a couple of years ago. I said, well, I know that advice is not well received, but I'm going to try to give you a little bit of advice right now. He said, what's that? I said, company anymore. My suggestion is that you take the money and move it away from that company. He said, why do you say that? I says, well, if that company has any kind of a financial glitch, your money could be at risk. He said, oh, no, 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 you don't understand. I love that company. I worked there for years. I just love it. And also they're totally financially bulletproof. I just know they're financially, healthy. And they've been in business for decades. My money's not at risk. So you all know the question I asked him next, right? I asked him, have you ever heard of Enron or United Airlines or Frontier Airlines or Circuit City? Or I just named off several. And he said, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. Thank you for the advice. But he said, I still have that $100,000. And I really liked what you showed me last night. So what I'd really like to do is, he said, I know you can't predict the future. What I'd like to do is go back in the past, maybe 4 or 5 years, and show me and compare the market where I've been to an index account. And he chose the years, so I couldn't cheat. And the very first year we looked at, the market was actually down. Other really cool thing about index account, especially on the lump sum side of things, a lot of times we can get a person a bonus. That year we could have got him a 7% bonus. So even though the market was down, he would have ended up at 107 that very first year. So the next year the market went back down again. And of course, when the market goes down, what happens to an index account? You're right, nothing. You would have just done this. Up, he would have done this. The next year it went back down, and he would have done this. I'm going to point a couple things out. Number one, not only do you get to keep all the money you put into an index account, but you also get to keep all the money that you've gained. Works a lot like a ratchet wrench. Click, 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 and it locks. In other words, all the money that's been credited to the account can never come back out of the account unless you ask for the money to come out of the account. Next one is index accounts only look at 1 year increments of time. A lot of times I ask people, would you call that 1 year right there, that up year, would you call that a gain? And sometimes I fool them, but most of the time I don't. They said, no, that's not a gain. We're trying to do. Another really cool thing about index accounts is you never have to make up for loss because you can never lose. And of course, the third one is this, and this is kind of the most exciting one for me. This is where we started. This little imaginary line is where we started. But you notice, this is an up year right here. This became the new starting point to credit new interest to the index account. Didn't have to get back up to where we started from. And with a traditional type account, you got to get back up to where you started to get new interest. So the next year, the index went back up again. Of course, he would have done that. Now, if you had to look back 5 years, would you rather be here or here? If you sit up here, you're right. This is much better. People say, Lyall, I can understand what you're doing here. I can draw dots and lines just as well as you can to make my account look good. Why don't you show me something real? Well, remember, he chose the years. And the years he chose were 2000 to 2005. So this is actually what really happened in the index account and the market back then. So the next year, people always say, wait a second, 06 and 07 were great years. 06. 07 were great years. We talked about 08, right? 08, we had a 54% adjustment. The market just kind of went off the cliff. But in 08, he would have had all these gains. And then 08, he would have done that. So in 04, 05, 06, 07, all my clients happened. The market went down, but all my clients stayed up here and just waited for the market to come back. So when the market came back in 2009, it came back a little bit. But the year after that, in 2010, it came back with abandon. And my clients just went up like crazy. So when I show people this, they get pretty excited. But then sometimes they want to see what real numbers might look like. I apologize, I haven't revised the numbers yet. But from 2000 to 2016, the S&P performed right at about 3.1% per year. There were some good years in there, except for 01 and up, right? 45 and 54% adjustment. That's why it performed 3.1. At the same time, the index account did about 7.2% per year. So $100,000 in the S&P back in 2000 would have become about $140,000 in 2016, and $100,000 in the index account. Even though we had these 2 down years, we didn't participate. $100,000 here would have actually grown to 276. That's kind of a huge difference, isn't it? Now, if all the prognosticators are right, in the next couple of years we have another adjustment, just an adjustment. Do adjustments happen quickly? You're right, quickly. That's why people lose money. So let's say we have a 50% adjustment. You got 140 in the S&P, you have a 50% adjustment. Now what do you got? You're right, you got 70. At the same time, we got 276 in the index account. We have the 50% adjustment. Now what do you got? 276. That's kind of a gigantic difference, isn't it? Amazing place to put money that you're sure you don't want to lose. I was in La Jolla on Monday, sitting with a orthopedic surgeon guy, and his wife was a tax attorney. And they both had completely different money personality styles. He is a gigantic risk taker. He wants to get as much of the upside potential, leave it ride, let her go, yeehaw, let's do this thing. And he lost his rear end in 08, but he's still yee-hee, gung-ho. And she, on the other hand, is, oh my gosh, you're 60 years old, let's stop losing money. I want to stop. But getting the upside potential of the market is still great. So I showed them this, and they said, oh my gosh, you showed me the best of both worlds. It was great for him because he's going to get the upside up to 12 or 13%. And for her, she was never going to lose another penny when the market went down. It was perfect. It was like a marriage again. So people always ask me, Lyall, when's the best time to be in an index account? And Warren Buffett, we've all talked about him already. He says our market's going to kind of look just kind of up and down, 5 or 6% up and down for the next 10 or 15 years. So kind of looking like this, up and down. Nothing huge, no big deal. The cool thing about this type of a market with an index account is when that market goes up, you go up. When the market goes down, you go sideways, up and 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 sideways. I don't know if you remember this earlier. I talked about being on a financial roller coaster. So would you rather be on a roller coaster or would you rather be on an escalator? You can never lose. And whenever the market goes up, you go up with it. So that is the index account. Well, I better hurry up. I just got a couple more minutes left. So earlier in the evening, I asked you a few questions. Y'all, I'm sure none of you remember the questions I asked, but one of the questions I asked was this. How many of you came tonight to learn more about how to protect that big old pile of money that you put together for retirement? Several of you raised your hands. So when you think about protecting money for retirement, what are you trying to protect it from? You're right. If you said loss, you're absolutely right. So one way to lose money, of course, is in the market. I just showed you how to protect your money in the market. But the other way to lose money, especially later on in life, is much more invasive than the market. And that's illness. Anybody know someone that got ill, really, really ill, and they lost all their retirement savings or all their life savings? We all do, right? So I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight. I'm going to talk about helping you protect your money against those physical things that can happen to us. And that, like I said, most invasive. I'm going to talk to you about a concept called living benefits. And those living benefits are actually kind of hooked up to a life insurance policy. Now, I don't want you to be all weird about life insurance because I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about that. No, that they're kind of attached to that, and it's an amazing thing. So tonight, I don't want you to, if life insurance was going to live up to its name, it wouldn't be called life insurance, would it? You're right, it'd be called death insurance. So I'm not going to talk about the death insurance side of things. I'm actually going to talk about the life insurance side of things. And I want you to put yourself in each one of these situations and ask yourself, how would I survive if I got in any one of these situations? So what if we could create a pool of money? And let's say it's $1 million. And the very first thing the $1 million would do is if someone if someone passed away, it would pay a death benefit of $1 million. And the death benefit would be tax-free. So what I just described there is that death policy thing, isn't it? That's all that is to that thing. But what would happen if someone had a critical illness? Critical illness is defined as heart attack, stroke, cancer. Does anybody out there know someone that had a heart attack? Yes. Stroke, yes. Cancer. I spoke Oklahoma about 3 months ago. I walked around the restaurant saying hi to everybody, walked up to a lady, said, hi, how you doing? She said, you told my story tonight. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, I've had all three in my own life. Heart attack, stroke, and cancer. I said, oh my gosh. Was that expensive? She said, yes. I'm still trying to pay it off. So critical illness. I got a quick story for you. Way out in Jay, Oklahoma, there's a guy named Dave Disco. Jay, Oklahoma's out in the middle of nowhere, kind of farm and ranch country. Dave Disco actually owns a beautiful ranch. He owns it outright, doesn't have any payments on it. Got a beautiful ranch house. His wife got 5 daughters. He owns a distribution company, doing very, very well, in other words. He also has a big old gigantic pile of money put together for retirement. Most of that money is not qualified money. When I talk about qualified money, I'm talking about things like 401ks and IRAs. Those are not attachable by people that you owe money to. But non-qualified money, people can get at that all they want to. And he also is totally into health, his own grass-fed beef, and he's got a basement with gym equipment. As a matter of fact, right over here next to my studio, I've got a basement full of gym equipment. I use mine just a little bit differently than his. When we do laundry, we like to hang our clothes on that gym equipment here, but he actually works out with his. He works out 5 or 6 days a week, and his wife works out with him too. So about 4 years ago, one of my associates went out and saw Dave. She's a friend of his for years. She walked into his kitchen and said, Dave, you're 48 years old. I've been knowing you for all these years. I think you're a little bit crazy because you got all these assets. You got this amazing family, but I know you have no life insurance. He said, you know, you're right. I don't know why I ever thought about that. I think I am a little crazy. You should get it. So she got him $1 million worth. That was 4 years ago. This May, 4 years ago, this May, she delivered the policy to him. So May, June, July. July 30th, he's in the basement lifting some weights, doing some bench presses. He throws the last one up on the rack and says, ouch, honey, I think I pulled a muscle in my chest. You know what's coming next. He sits up, starts sweating profusely. The pain goes down his left arm. She says, you're having a heart attack. Let's go to the clinic. Well, the clinic in Jay, Oklahoma is not much to talk about. They got some Band-Aids and some ace bandages, but that's about it. Maybe a little mercurochrome. They called a helicopter. They flew him over to Joplin, Missouri, and they fixed him. Lucky for him that he lived, because he had that thing they call the Widowmaker. The reason they call it the Widowmaker is 90% of people that have the Widowmaker, their first symptom is death. He lived through it. They put a big old stent in his heart. He comes home 2 or 3 weeks later. He's starting to have outrageous chest pain again. He didn't go to the clinic, though. He called the helicopter company and said, come land on my ranch. So they took him over to the hospital, said, it's your lucky day, no heart attack. So we waited a few months for all the money, all the bills to come in and all the dust to settle. Rides were $30,000 each, so $60,000 worth of helicopter rides, and about $180,000, $190,000 worth of doctors and hospitals. And we find out also that Dave Disco had, he was like 40% of all small business owners 4 years ago. He had this much health insurance. But do you think that the doctors and the hospitals were worried and the helicopter companies were worried about collecting money from him? Nope. They could have filed a lien on his ranch. They could have made him get a mortgage on his ranch, or they could have actually accessed a whole bunch of that big old pile of money to pay the bill. But rather than doing that, what we did was we took $289,000 out of his life insurance policy, all of the bills off. He actually could have accessed 75% of the million, in this case up to $750,000. We didn't have to do that. Put yourself in that position. How would you fare financially if you got that kind of a situation? Next one is terminal illness. Terminal illness is easy to define. If I go to the doctor tomorrow, the doctor says, Lyall, you got 2 years to live, I'm terminal. Another story real quick, with this young lady down in Atlanta. The company we get these benefits from, that's and she was one of their very first clients 17 or 18 years ago. And she was a single mom, had 2 little beautiful little girls. She didn't have any idea who her ex-husband was, and her parents had already passed away. So top of mind for her was, oh my gosh, what if I do the same thing to my little daughters as what my parents did to me, which is die too soon. So she's got herself $1 million policy. And just after she got the policy, just a few months after she got the policy, she got a really bad case of cancer. Totally just crazy. So for an entire year, she does chemo, radiation, all the stuff you're supposed to do for that year. And 1 year later, the doctor called her in the office and said, this may be the worst day of my life. I've done everything I can do for you. It's time for you to get your affairs in order because you're terminal. She said, time out, doc. I can't die. I've got 2 little girls I got. He said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. She said, well, I've been doing my own research. How many of you would do your own research? I would. Anytime I wasn't working or sleeping, I'd be researching. And she did that. And divinely inspired or coincidentally or whatever it was, she said she was watching 60 Minutes a couple months earlier, and she saw an article on 60 Minutes talking about her exact type of cancer and this amazing new miracle treatment that's having amazing results. She said, couldn't we try that? He said, that's a great idea, except you said experimental. Your health insurance won't pay for experimental. She said, I'll pay for it myself. He said, great idea. If you got somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000, we'll get started right away. So on the way home, through the tears, she said, man, where am I going to get $100,000, $200,000? So, but she remembers that she had this. So she called her agent and said, hey, I'm just calling to make sure all my payments are up to date. On my death benefit, I want to make sure it's in place. She said, the agent said, yes, it is, but why do you ask? She said, well, the doctor told me I'm terminal today. Agent said, time out, hold the phone, we can file a claim. Now, when you file a claim on that, what does that mean? You're right, somebody died. In this case, she wasn't dead. We filed the claim, we got her check for $100,000. She paid for a bone marrow transplant, and those two little girls are now big girls. And she raised them because she's still alive. Her life insurance policy totally saved her life. She could have accessed 90% of the million, in this case, up to $900,000. Put yourself in that position. If you became terminally ill or one of your loved ones became terminally illness, what would that do to you financially? The last one, chronic illness. Chronic illness. Chronic illness is defined as not being able to perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. Those activities are toileting, transferring, continence, eating, bathing, and dressing. If you can't perform 2 of the 6, most people think about the need for long-term care insurance. Long-term care insurance has become very, very expensive, and the benefits have actually been shrinking over the years. As a matter of fact, last year, the #1 provider of long-term care insurance in the United States completely quit selling long-term care insurance. They went out of business. Well, they're still paying their claims, but they're not selling it anymore. Another statistic is 50% of us will spend time in a facility before we pass away. So most of us are putting the biggest pile of money that we can together, right? And we've got a 50-50 chance between my wife and I. As a matter of fact, she's the one that's running this, running this show tonight. So you can just tell by looking at her, she's much better looking than I am. You can tell she's smarter than me. She's younger than me. She's healthier than me. So between her and me, 50-50 chance is probably going to be me, right? So I don't want to, cut my life too short. So I'm going to get into my 80s probably, maybe start wetting the bed a little bit more than I do now. Gotcha. Okay. Right. And she's going to say, Lyall, I really love you a lot. We've got this big old pile of money, but I got to tell you, I love you a lot. And I could change your diaper, but I don't want to anymore. So she's going to put me in the facility. And when she does that, who gets to pay for that? We do. She puts me in the facility, and every month she's going to write a check to that facility. In the state of Colorado, somewhere between $6,000 and $8,000 per month. And I will live there. Statistically, I'll live there for 18 to 24 months. And she want to come down to the facility and kill me again. And the reason why that is because I will have spent most, if not all, but at least most of the money. And she'll live the last 8 to 10 years of her life, statistically, living right next to the poverty level. And that's happening to about 40% of our elderly today. Cool thing about the chronic illness benefit is it would actually give her access to 2% of this $1 million. 2% of $1 million is $20,000. Now, most people don't get very excited about $20,000. That's $20,000 per month. And it's also tax-free. So I want you to ask yourself, in the next 50, 60, 80, 100 years, do you think something like this is going to happen to you, death? Or do you think one of these 3 things might happen to you? And if you said one of those 3 things, you're right. We've been keeping statistics for about 20 years. For every 1 death benefit we pay 8 of these. So I always ask people, do you have life insurance? They say, yep, got life insurance. Do you have the old kind or the new kind? If they look back at me like you're looking back at me, I know you have the old kind. You haven't had your life insurance. One of my people that works with me, she's an Aflac person, and she's 48 years old. She said, Lyall, I can't believe this. I just ran some numbers on this. And since it's the death benefit first, these prices are very, very competitive. She said, I bought my Aflac policy 15 years ago. And I just ran the numbers on one of these. This is less expensive than what I paid for my Aflac policy 15 years ago. I can't believe it. It's just amazing. So I want to thank you for coming tonight. You know, there's several about tonight. If there's anything that caught you and grabbed you, make sure you get back with the person that invited you, because there's some really, really cool things that can be done for you. I tell people all the time, if you haven't had your life insurance policy analyzed or looked at in the last 5 or 6 months, you probably should, because I'm sure you have the old kind. So we do this presentation. This is really cool. We've been doing this about every 5 days now for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months. We're going to keep on doing it every 5 days. So a lot of times people come and they watch and they think of people, oh my God, that could get something else. You know, the information was great. The speaker was not that good, but the information was great. So we should get these people back here. People they work with, or sometimes, you know, parents want to bring their kids back to get them off the payroll. And then other times kids want to bring their parents back to make sure that their inheritance is in place. That's all fair game. Come back as many times as you'd like. But here's one thing I tell people all the time. If you want to change something in your life, you're going to have to change something in your life. And maybe a better way to put it, that seems kind of like, kind of different way. Confucius, we all heard of Confucius, right? Confucius said the best time to plant a tree was when? 20 years ago. Next best time to plant a tree is today. So the best time to start saving money was about 20 years ago, right? The next best time to start saving money is today. And I'll tell you that creating wealth does not come from saving money. Creating wealth comes from the habit of saving money. That's the key. The habit. Say, well, Lyall, I just don't have that much to start saving. Well, 50 cents a day or $1 a day will get things started. I'll tell you what happens to people when they start doing that. They see their money start growing, and then what they do is that somehow, some way, they find more money to add to that pile of money that they've already created, and things kind of snowball for them, and they create gigantic piles of money for retirement. So like I said, I thank you all for coming. I'm going to go ahead and unmute. I'm going to have Tina unmute you. And I think I want to maybe ask a couple people a question or two. So I'm actually going to have Tina choose the people to ask questions to, because since I can actually see 4 of you on the side of the you want to unmute me and I'll ask the question.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
All right. Tawny, you were watching and engaged all evening. Let's see what Tawny has to say.
What was your favorite thing about what you saw tonight?
Oh, I love the interest and the security behind no taxes, and it never goes down. It'll stay even and go up.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Tina,
How about you, Robert?
Robert is the one guy I can see. Robert, what was your favorite thing tonight?
Well, I had a couple different things, Lyall. Certainly the compound interest and the tax-deferred status and some of the mechanics of the life insurance policy I liked. I understand some of the concepts. I was a banker for 25 years.
Oh, awesome.
And, so yeah, it was a nice job, and I enjoyed it a great deal.
Thank you very much, Robert. That means a lot to me coming from a banker. That's great. Thank you. Tina, let's choose one more, and then we probably ought to wrap this up.
Okay, how about JL? JL has been just watching you very closely.
JL, what was your favorite thing tonight?
Yeah, I found it really fascinating. Thank you, Tawny, for inviting me. What I really loved your index account. I'd never heard of that before, and I love it.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It is.
Thank you very much, JL.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, guys, I think our next presentation is going to be, Tina, is going to be on Saturday, or what day is going to be on next?
Yes, let me double check. No, it's going to be, oops, hold on here. I've got that shut off. I have to find the right calendar. Somebody jump in and save me here while I'm trying to find the right calendar.
Someone that knows?
Sorry.
No
Who
problem.
are you people?
They'll get it in their email.
Well, yeah, there's one other thing. If anybody wants to actually fill out an evaluate my prowess as a speaker, You can actually go to www.money101eval.com. www.money101eval.com. And the next meeting is going to be next Monday.
Yes.
And so anyway, there
It's
we
next
go.
Monday at 5 o'clock Colorado time. So
Which
for those of
means
you who
7
are
o'clock
on,
East Coast and 4 o'clock West Coast. So I thank you all for coming. It's I've taken a little bit too much of your time. Normally I like to get this done in an hour. It's been about an hour and 3 or 4 minutes. So I will sign off for now. Well, Tina will go ahead and unmute you all, and we'll just say farewell, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you,
you.
Lyall. Thank you.
You're welcome.